Hello, Anthony.
Hello, Claudine.
We're here today to talk about the drive to end citizenship-based taxation. One way to do this is by supporting territorial taxation for individuals. And we're going to talk a little bit about a petition we can all sign and send to Congress that's really going to help. And on the line, we're joined today by a special guest, Keith Redmond, American Overseas, basically a global advocate, I would say. Like the work that Keith does is very tireless. So I know your schedule is always packed, Keith. So thanks for joining us today.
No, thank you for the invitation. This is a very important initiative that we are undertaking for 9 million Americans overseas.
Yep. And all Americans, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, let's just get up to speed on where things stand right now. I know you had a trip last week to Washington with Solomon Yu and Michael DeSombre for some meetings regarding, we're going to call it TTFI, because it's much easier to say than
a lot easier to say.
Territorial Taxation for Individuals. Fill us in on what transpired at the meetings in Washington. What was the goal? What was achieved?
Well, I did attend some of the meetings where Solomon Yu and Michael DeSombre attended the whole scope of meetings. And the objective of these meetings is to really talk with the Republican senators and congressmen, since they are in the majority right now, to inform them why TTFI, Territorial Taxation for Individuals, is very important to get into the tax reform package. I mean, we're talking about territorial taxation for corporations and the benefits there, and we can't leave out individuals, which not only encompasses individuals, meaning the 9 million Americans living overseas and the accidental Americans who are adversely affected by citizenship-based taxation, but we're also talking about these Americans overseas who are small to medium-sized business owners, who are entrepreneurs, and who are self-employed. So it's not just the individual, even though it falls under that umbrella. Now, for full disclosure, the Territorial Taxation for Individual proposal, or white paper, if you will, is, I was part of the process of putting that together. I work closely with the Republicans overseas. This is a Republicans overseas initiative in order to satisfy the terrible situation all Americans overseas, regardless of a party affiliation or non-affiliation, are in at present under the unique practice of the U.S. of citizenship-based taxation. So last week was a week where Solomon and Michael went to the White House to gather the support there. They were very impressed with the grassroots effort and the need to have this changed. So they are supportive of this. However, that's great that they're supportive of this, but the bottom line is Congress makes the laws. So we had to venture over to the other side of Pennsylvania Avenue and to meet with key senators and congressmen in regards to lobbying for this territorial taxation for individuals and what the benefits would be and why there is a need there vis-a-vis the adverse effects.
And I just want to give
question in quite a very long way.
Yeah.
No, that's perfect.
And Keith, I just want to add on, just sort of to bring people up to speed, or just to sort of refresh sort of everything that's going on. You know, we talk to people from all around the world. I talked to somebody in Germany today, and then someone in New York who had things overseas as well. And we always talk to people, and all these people have tax professionals. They all have these tax professionals, and they find out that they were doing something wrong. And the reason why is because the current system is so complicated that it usually outstrips the ability of most tax professionals. And even when you have simple things, simple things, if you're doing business in a LLC overseas, an LLC equivalent, it requires it creates a huge obligation filing, like a controlled foreign corporation, which is really a nightmare. And you're doing all this work. People pay us thousands of dollars to do all their tax returns. We get it all done, and at the end of the day, they owe the IRS zero. And it's simply because the code also allows foreign income exclusion or a foreign tax credit, because the fact is, there's not any U.S. expat overseas. Well, I guess there's people in Dubai who don't have to pay taxes. But for most U.S. persons overseas, they're getting taxed, and they're getting taxed hard. And their taxes are actually higher than in the U.S. And so they're going through all these hoops and hurdles. And the net result for the U.S. Treasury is nothing. And in fact, it's worse than nothing because there's the administrative burden of handling all of these returns. So I would make the argument that the system is now it's a bad deal for the U.S. government because there's really nothing in it for it. It's just more you're overwhelming the incredibly scarce resources of the IRS. The IRS is at half the capacity. When you look at revenue officers, revenue agents, and even people at the service centers, you're looking at half the capacity of where it was in 2008. And so that's one of the reasons why I say, look, everybody has something to benefit. If we just stop going to try to, you're not really taxing them overseas because they're not paying any tax. You're just throwing a bunch of compliance hurdles on them and also on the U.S. government.
Which I think really leads me nicely to the next question, Keith, that I have for you. Is White House support is there, but like you said, only Congress makes laws. So what or who are we up against? Where are we getting pushback on this?
Well, it's interesting because I wouldn't want to say we have learned. I would have to say it has been validated for us where the pushback comes from. And one area or one industry is the investment industry, if you will. They do not want something like TTFI because it comes out revenue positive. And the reason why it comes out revenue positive, it closes a loophole. And to put it in very simple terms, it closes a loophole where non-Americans can invest in the United States and not be taxed on their investment. However, Americans who happen to live outside the U.S. have to file, and I must say, even though, Anthony, you did say oftentimes you don't have to pay tax, there are a number of instances where one does have to pay tax to the U.S. because of financial products, investments, retirement, unearned income, if you will, that is not recognized by the IRS. And even in some countries, key taxes, which are not recognized by the IRS.
Right, not every tax. Thank you for that clarification, Keith. Right, I did overspeak because I'm talking about people's wages. Typically, there's not anything to tax, but with the unique products overseas, there are horrible things and especially when you have a tax-free financial product in, say, India. You have a you have a tax-free account.
In the U.S., like Homeland Americans would have in the U.S., they offer those products where you live, in France, India, et cetera.
Well, I think this is really the unfairness of the situation. So a non-U.S. person investing in the U.S. system doesn't have to pay taxes.
No, exactly.
And that's really
the investment industry will support those people, and they will throw Americans living overseas under the bus as a result.
Yeah.
So that's one industry that is pushing back on this.
Well, and if I could just back off a little bit, it is a powerful industry because if we look at the last big reform, tax 1986, Wall Street got in there and they stuck some nasty little sneaky things in there, and that's what I'm talking about specifically is the treatment of foreign mutual funds, where they created this whole passive foreign investment company treatment of it, and that was really a way to encourage people to say, "Are you sure you want a foreign mutual fund? Why don't you come to the U.S.? Then you don't have to do all this terrible, terrible work that you have to do."
Yeah, exactly. So it is a major industry, but I think they need to be called out on what they are doing.
Yeah.
The other key industry, I hate to say, though I'm still very thankful for the support that you give Americans overseas, is the tax compliance industry.
What? What? What do you mean? They don't.
They want.
They do not want citizenship-based taxation to go away.
But then if that's...
They want to ensure that they can go after and scaremonger every American living overseas and every accidental American that comes out of the woodwork to ensure that they enter the U.S. tax system.
You can't be true. I mean, if that was true, that means they put themselves ahead of their clients. I mean...
Well, of course.
Oh my God, it's so sad.
Yeah, and I think that is really, I think you have some overt players in the tax field that do it. H&R Block really didn't hide the fact that there were some things. The IRS wanted to simplify an earned income tax credit, a thing that was filled out wrong recently. And this is an article we wrote a couple of years ago. The earned income tax credit, low-income people, it was for low-income people. It was a form so complicated, everyone messed it up. Mostly everyone messed it up. And so the IRS says, look, we're going to do the simplified reporting for earned income tax credit. H&R Block came out and said, no, that's not a good idea at all. You can't do that. You're going to create a lot of problems. Well, then I think it was the Treasury Inspector General or somebody did some research in it, and they found this out. They found out that people who prepared the form themselves had a lower error rate than H&R Block did. And so, there's H&R Block saying with a straight face, guys, you don't want to simplify this because reasons. And that ends with that. And so it is a powerful lobby, and a powerful lobby just needs to know it sticks to its one thing. Stick to the one thing that's important to you. So that will be. Does,
but the anger and the pushback from the American overseas population is growing and growing.
Good.
And we're showing it now with the letters that were sent, that were brought to the White House and to the different congressmen and senators' office last week, and the petition that we are asking people to sign for the end citizenship-based taxation and go to a territorial-based taxation for individuals.
And I would say this: I think it's going to work. I think it's going to go here. I think the stars are aligning just right, and this is really our opportunity here. But I would say this: if it doesn't work, and you are a U.S. expat, would you ever use one of these people? Would you ever use a firm that never came out in support of TTFI? Because if they're not speaking up about it, what are they doing? Are they really an advocate for you at all?
Well, no. I mean, the bottom line is no, they are not a friend to Americans overseas. Mm-hmm. That's not to say, if you're a homeland American, there's many times where you need to use a U.S. tax compliance professional.
Well,
that makes
luckily.
sense. You're in the United States. But the scaremongering tactics that I have encountered and others have encountered with U.S. tax compliance professionals, not all, but there's quite a few, and going after Americans overseas and accidental Americans is unacceptable. It's not professional. So, but they're scared of losing that particular segment of their customer base.
Yep.
They don't want to lose them.
Yeah, and to me, it's such a short-sighted position because if we get real tax reform going, to me, as a tax professional myself, I am hoping for this tax reform because we have a system right now that is basically squelching opportunity. So there's a whole bunch of clients I would have that I don't have. And you don't see them because they're not in business. They're not doing things. And so if we get a meaningful tax reform for myself, and I'm hoping that any tax professional listening to this who sort of you're trying to weigh, your self-interest with the interest of your clients, I would say your interest, if you think of it from the correct perspective, it's the same interest. You want this reform to go through. It's a good deal for your clients. It's a good deal for you. The status quo, it's keeping people down.
Okay, so that's one of my last questions.
One last thing I do have to add, and it's a good deal for America because TTFI would allow an increase of American exports, and more overseas Americans, being hired will lead to more promotion of American products and more exports.
Yes.
So there is a benefit not just to the American overseas, but to the homeland American.
Yes, because
we're all tied together.
We're sort of encouraging everyone to take action and sign the petition so we can actually make a difference. And that was my last question. Anthony, I'll start with you. Mm-hmm. This isn't just American overseas or accidental Americans. Mm-hmm. You just talked about that. How does this literally affect every American citizen, no matter where they live, United States or not?
Well, I think for a lot of people, they think, well, I'm never going to live overseas. And, so why should I care about this? And they're just going to go overseas. So what's the big deal? Well, we live in a global world, and what has happened right now is that because of FATCA, the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, because of worldwide taxation, companies around the world who normally hired U.S. people, citizens, because look, U.S. citizens tend to be, in the gas and oil industry, fantastic. And engineers, fantastic. Americans can really help companies around the globe get to that next level or stay at a very, very high level. Well, a lot of them just won't. They're just not going to hire Americans anymore. So now that job goes to a German. It goes to a Swiss. It could go to anybody else. And here's the problem. Well, if you're a U.S. person staying in the U.S. and you're saying, hey, why can't I get a promotion? Well, because maybe the promotion you want is occupied that the person who would have gone overseas. And that's the problem. And it's like these wonderful, high-paying, highly lucrative positions are going away for the U.S. person. So now you are no longer in competition. When we had before FATCA, before this stuff really blew up, you were in competition with them. But now you are. And
number two, I'll give a reason, because I talk to a lot of potential clients, is love. And people don't think about that.
No.
I would say at least 50% of the people that I talk to that live overseas, I say, how did you end up living in France? How did you end up living on this island? I fell in love.
Yeah.
Literally, 50 to 75% of the...
And it could be something, the U.S. has a lot of foreign citizens too, so it's something you're in college, you had no plans ever to leave the country. Well, I'll tell you something. There could be someone in your life that you will leave the country for. Trust me on that. Yeah, they're absolutely. Yep. Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, it happened to me. You just never know how things happen. And I think it's also in particular to realize that, Americans overseas are not a monolith or a homogeneous population. Many homeland Americans think that they were raised in the U.S. and have left for other parts of the world. There are many Americans living overseas who have never lived in the United States because they've had an American parent or parents, okay? The second part is that because citizenship-based taxation is tied to one's nationality, I think it's important to just give one brief description, is that because it's tied to one's nationality, if you're born in the United States to French parents because they were there studying, you're born on U.S. soil, therefore you're an American. One gentleman comes to mind. He left at 3 months of age, literally in diapers. He is obliged for the rest of his life to file and pay taxes, should he owe taxes, to the United States because of that life event of being born in the U.S. and even leaving at 3 months of age. He doesn't speak a lick of English. He is French. He is, everything about him is French, but he has this burden. So this is just the other ramifications or consequences of citizenship-based taxation that must be corrected, along with everything else that we spoke about.
Well, and you're bringing up another point, Keith, that a huge source of clients for us is visa holders who come to the U.S. A lot of in tech, a lot of visa holders in tech, a lot from India, but also Europe. And they come here, and then as you have that H-1B visa, you work in the U.S., you are now a U.S. person. So everything you had back in your home country now becomes subject to U.S. world taxation. Now, a lot of people, so many people get surprised with it. People are getting surprised with this right now today. But as the word spreads back to their home country, hey, watch out. You know what? Before you think America's this and that, you got to understand that you're going to be paying more in taxes here. So maybe you want to think about twice before becoming a U.S. person. Now, the fact is some people think the H-1B program is abusive, and I think there's some instances of that. I'm sure there are. But there are a lot of good things to it because we get some incredibly talented people. It's just some absolutely incredibly talented people that help develop and create value in the U.S. that spreads to everybody. So there's another example where TTFI helps everybody in America.
Yes. I agree.
Now, Keith, talk to me about the petition campaign. When's it running through? We're going to put a link so people can fill out the petition. And let me tell you, I did it. It took literally like 10 seconds.
I did mine in 9.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I think what's interesting is with this particular petition or this situation is that our goal is that we want to get 6,400 signatures, and I'll explain why. And it doesn't have to be just Americans overseas. It can be accidental Americans. It can also be homeland Americans who see and understand the reason why we need to end citizenship-based taxation. The 6,400 number comes from an example. The Republican National Committee, for example, solicited its database of 60 million voters to sign a petition to support tax reform. So these are homeland Americans. They received 6,400 responses.
Wow.
I repeat, 6,400 responses out of 60 million voters.
Is that like point
The American
oh, oh, oh?
overseas population is 9 million voters. So we want to match that at we want to put that at 6,400 to show how serious Americans overseas are that they need this change.
Yes. Oh, that's awesome. Now the petition's running through when?
22nd of October is the deadline because we need to put everything together for the next series of meetings up on Capitol Hill.
Okay.
The website is ttfi.info.
Excellent.
So again, it's TTFI like in Territorial Taxation for Individuals. So ttfi.info. Very simple. Takes 10 seconds to complete.
Yeah.
If you want to put a comment at the end, you're more than welcome to put a comment and sign the petition.
Yes, and we'll definitely link this, below this video. We'll make sure we put a link so it's easy for everyone to get to, but so easy. And like you had said, I think in an email you sent to us, fill it out and then email it to 5 friends or family members. And what a huge difference we can make.
Absolutely, because the time is going to be now. I mean, the last time there was tax reform was a generation ago, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So this is the time that every American overseas, accidental American, and homeland Americans who really understand this particular problem sign this petition.
Yes, and I'm in a lot of the Facebook groups you have, and it's a really good sounding board for people. But I think it's also important for them to know, all right, now there's actually an action you can take to try to fix this problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We need to do it.
Yep. All right. Well, Keith, thank you again so much for joining us today. Again, we ask everyone to go to ttfi.info. Simply sign the petition. So quick, so easy, and you literally will be making a change and making people's lives better and making a difference. So thanks to Keith. If you have questions or comments, don't hesitate to comment below. You can also contact us, info@irsmedic.com. Thank you so much for watching.